Many animals in the world today cause people all kinds of problems, which makes the general public fear them. One such animal is the snake. While it's true that many snakes are harmless and less threatening, many people frequently worry about coming across one of the dangerous ones. To be fair, people have good reason to fear larger snakes because there are plenty of them in the world and they have an unsettling way of showing up in unexpected places. In light of that, these are the top 10 largest snakes ever discovered. Number 10. In this first entry, I'm going to use a little reverse psychology and show you a snake that lived a long time ago and is the largest snake ever documented, rather than a snake that is currently living on the globe. The titanoboa was a terrifying ancient snake that was one of the biggest and most dangerous animals to have ever lived on land. All we know about it is from the fossils it left behind, which suggest that it lived approximately 60 million years ago, give or take. The really scary part is that when the fossils were measured in all of their different forms, they discovered that the titanoboa was approximately 13 meters long and weighed over 1,000 kilograms. To put that into perspective, the largest living snake on our list was approximately 3 meters shorter and more than 5 times lighter. So, yes, that was a very large snake, and once again, we should all be grateful that it is no longer in existence. If you're wondering, the titanoboa was eventually surpassed by its relatives, the anaconda and the boa constrictor, many of which we'll be seeing in this video. This is appropriate because the titanoboa was thought to have a mixture of these two species based on its appearance, and it would behave differently. If you're wondering where this enormous snake lived, it would have been in forested areas in some parts of the world. Many fossils have been found in Colombia, but some have also been found in other places, raising questions about how widely this creature spread. Given its size and girth, it's easy to imagine this snake was extremely difficult to take down and ate almost whatever it wanted. Number 9. One of the reasons people have grown to fear snakes over time is that they seem to appear everywhere and at any time, and when they do, they can be very bothersome because they can get into tight spaces and go unnoticed until it's almost too late. For instance, in India last year, a rather large python invaded a school bus, and it took an hour for it to get out. You can only imagine how stressful that hour must have been. The python, which measured over 3 meters in length and weighed approximately 80 kilograms, was discovered by school officials who called the forest rescue team. This allowed the reptile to be returned to its rightful home. A video of the forest department's efforts to free the enormous reptile, which was clinging desperately to the bus's engine compartment, went viral on social media. It was evident that the reptile was simply not ready to go, though it didn't have much of a choice in the matter in the end. We now know how the snake got off the bus, but how exactly did it get on it? That raises a great question. It's thought that the man who drove the bus lived in an area where goats are common. The python happened to go near the bus because of those goats, but it was spotted and the locals tried to find it. However, it hid inside the bus to stay safe. If that's the case, that would make for one cunning serpent. Number 8. Now that you know, you can assume that at some time we were going to wind up in Florida because if anything weird is going to happen, it will definitely happen there. In the worst possible way, Florida is known for its snake population. No, I'm not referring to politicians or the governor of the state. Rather, I'm referring to the fact that Florida has tragically become a hub for snake infestations as a result of the large number of people who have either bought or brought in snakes from outside the state, and then they eventually just throw them into the wild, believing that nothing bad will happen. But here's a hint, everything will go wrong. This 2010 tale readily demonstrates this argument, as a 4-meter-long anaconda was discovered in Florida's wilds and labeled the state's first of its kind to be trapped in the wild, a trend that, I assure you, did not end there. One of the ironies in this situation is that the mounted patrol unit that went through the park where the snake was found wasn't really searching for the snake in the first place. Instead, they were searching for the reason why ducks and geese had been disappearing from the area, believing that maybe an alligator or a crocodile had come around and started chowing down. And they were partly correct. They simply misjudged the species. The snake would be found in a drain pipe that went to a pond, most likely from where it had escaped capture until the mounted units spotted it. It's not clear how this particular snake got to Florida, but it's ironic that it wasn't just any old anaconda, it was a green anaconda. Presumably, someone bought it and then gave it up after realizing they couldn't care for it. Number 7. Since snakes are known to find their way into almost any situation and figure out how to frighten people, one family in Thailand found themselves staring at a massive 5-meter-long python while going about their daily business in their garage. Firefighters arrived and had to use 6 of them to drag the deadly serpent out onto the driveway. Just think about how big and heavy the snake was and how much effort it took to get it out. That snake is quite hefty. Although this story has a happy ending, it must have been extremely stressful for the family because even one of the people in charge of the snake's rescue noted that it was easily one of the largest ones they had ever caught. In case you're curious, the python was captured, contained, and then released back into the wild. Number 6. I'll start this one by saying that finding a large snake in Brazil is not unusual. The green anaconda, the largest species of snake, is found there and can grow to quite large sizes. However, in this instance, the snake was larger than the typical green anaconda and required heavy machinery to remove. Construction workers on the job of a dam were suddenly staring at the largest snake they had ever seen while conducting some controlled explosives close to a cave. The snake was over 10 meters long and 400 kilograms in weight. To be clear, the snake was real. You can see photos and videos of it, though there is obviously some disagreement as to whether it was really that big. I mean, I seriously doubt that they had the time, desire, or even the tools necessary to measure and weigh it correctly. Still, the fact that it was obviously a mega snake of some kind is enough to frighten someone. An intriguing twist to the tale is that, once the images and videos were posted online, the construction workers faced harsh criticism for their actions. Many people believed that the snake shouldn't have died that way and should have been left alone. Though the exact cause of the snake's death is unknown, some speculate that it was caused by the explosions the workers were doing. Others believed that the workers had a more direct say in matters and that they disapproved of the snake being chained to their machinery in order to be taken off. In any case, those workers had quite the tale to tell when they returned home that day. Number 5. Imagine this. You and your family are dining at a nice restaurant and everything is going smoothly. Suddenly, you think you hear something, so you look up at the ceiling. As you do, you notice a bulge emerging from the ceiling, and suddenly you watch that bulge break open and you see a snake within the ceiling. This may sound like an oddly specific story, but it actually happened to some people in this restaurant in Hong Kong who were just going about their business when all of a sudden there's a snake and it was somehow in the ceiling above them. Naturally, the staff was called in to help deal with the situation. The irony was that the only way to deal with it was to make the hole in the ceiling bigger so that the snake could escape. According to estimates, the snake was over 6 meters long, and in the video, the people who were still inside the restaurant were both amazed and horrified by what they were seeing. After all, nobody goes to a restaurant expecting their meal to be interrupted by a huge snake. The real mystery is how the snake managed to get into the ceiling and stay there for so long. As previously mentioned, snakes are cunning and can fit through walls, ceilings, and really any opening they choose. Therefore, you should not allow this to discourage you from visiting your neighborhood restaurant and instead encourage your support of the little businesses there. Number 4. If you want a good indication of how frequently giant snakes are found, just look at the countries that have caught the most of them and have chosen to record the sizes of the snakes they have found. For instance, Malaysia has found so many large snakes that they are aware when a potential record breaker is spotted. One such snake was discovered in 2016 and was a reticulated python. It was an incredible 7.5 meters long and weighed an incredible 250 kilograms. Construction workers found the enormous snake on an island, and they kept it in an office where they fed and watered it while they called experts. Curiously, the snake later died after it laid an egg, which really confused a lot of people because they wanted to return it to the wild where it had its rightful place. Another interesting aspect is that many curious people came to the office to see the snake for themselves while the workers waited for the rescue team to arrive and remove it. One person even made an outright offer to buy the snake for a large sum of money. Number 3. What are the 2 things you should wisely avoid doing when dealing with a snake, especially one that is fairly large? This is not a trick question, by the way. The first answer is obviously its bite, as even non-venomous snakes can still bite their victims severely. The second thing to avoid is getting tangled up in the large body of the snake. Several snake species would rather strangle their victims till they fall limp rather than bite or even poison them to death. This method may not look very pretty, but it does the trick. Unfortunately, a guy in Indonesia nearly learned how that process operates the hard way. When a group of villagers thought they saw a log while walking beside a river, one of them touched the wood and discovered it wasn't a log. It turned out to be a gigantic python, which promptly set about trying to choke the man to death. Fortunately, the other villagers sprung into action and were able to free the man from the serpent's bonds before confining it in a cage. The fight's video went viral, and it's easy to understand why. How large was the serpent, you ask? Well, it was believed to be about 7 meters long, which is very enormous for a python. Oh, and in case you were wondering, yes, in the past, snakes have been known to suffocate and consume humans. These instances are uncommon, but they have been reported, particularly in Indonesia. Number 2. We are back in Florida, and it can't be good if that's where we are. In 2017, a group of snake hunters, more on that later, went into the Florida Everglades and discovered themselves staring at a 50-kilogram and more than 5-meter-long Burmese python, one of the largest they had ever seen in the region. A head camera captured the snake in that moment, and the group that caught it killed it before removing it because they felt it could have eaten many of them before it was ever captured. Before you question whether or not this was a fair thing to do, there are a few things you should be aware of. As you may remember, when I mentioned that Florida was essentially overrun by snakes, one of the consequences of that infestation was the establishment of the South Florida Water Management District's Python Elimination Program. That sounds simple enough, doesn't it? The idea behind this program is that it would pay people to go out and find snakes, such as the Burmese python, and then eliminate them completely. However, when dealing with an invasive species like this, there's a significant risk to the ecosystem. Number 1. The next story has a plot twist that many of you won't see coming in Brazil. A few friends were boating down a river when they came across a huge snake that was over 5 meters in length. Specifically, it was a yellow anaconda of impressive size, and they decided to try to capture it. It's certainly one option that they had. The people in the boat are seen in the video clearly trying everything to capture the creature, even after the anaconda made it clear that it would attack them if they didn't let go. Eventually, the people released the snake, and that's when the story goes horribly wrong because the video eventually made its way into the hands of the authorities, who labeled the 3 torturers and decided to fine them the equivalent of several $100s and possibly put them in jail for more than a year. That's all we have to say about snakes, including the largest snakes that have ever existed. Were you surprised at any of these clips? If you are aware of any other similar stories that should have been in the video, please share them with me in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.